Today we're going to talk about accuracy in FPS games, more specifically in Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 1. However, this does also apply to other games such as CSGO or Overwatch. Whatever it is you're playing, these tips and tricks will almost certainly help you improve. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Hexa for advising me on certain points in this video. His channel is linked in the description down below. So a little bit about my playstyle before we get into this. As you guys probably know, I'm a big Battlefield player, play a lot of Battlefield 4 and mainly play in vehicles. Now around 4 to 5 months ago, I decided to start playing infantry instead of just playing in vehicles. Now this was a big jump because obviously the sensitivity is massively different between vehicles and infantry, especially if you're playing on PC, and it makes things a lot more difficult when you're trying to combine the two. Now there were a couple of things that I decided to do when I changed to play infantry, and this vastly improved my aim. And I'm not saying I'm the best infantry, I'm definitely not, but I'm a whole lot better than I was when I started, and if it continues I'm going to be pretty good in the future. So these tips are definitely something that works and you can take that from me. Now some very important things that you need to do before you actually start looking at your sensitivity and playstyle is a couple of quick fixes that you might have already done, you might have not done, but it's things that you need to double check. Mouse acceleration is something that everyone can suffer from if you're playing on PC. You need to go into your control panel and make sure you disable mouse acceleration. I'm sure you've heard this before, but it is really bad if you've got this on. It basically means that when you're turning the mouse to the side, it's not going exactly where you want it to go. Windows is speeding up the mouse. It can be quite useful, say you're just browsing on the internet, that can be quite useful. Maybe if you're using a laptop or something like that, but if you're playing a game, you 100% want that off. Now another way of removing mouse acceleration is to visit one of the websites I've got in the link down below, mouseacceleration.co.uk. This will definitely help you fix mouse acceleration and force Windows to remove it. It has a very detailed step-by-step guide to help you to do this. I've done it to my PC and lots of people have in the past. It's down below in the description, definitely check that one out. You also want to make sure you go into the settings of your game and make sure you're enabling raw input for your mouse and maybe disabling any acceleration that it offers in the options. You definitely want all of that stuff off. Now when it comes to the DPI of your mouse, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Some people and some friends of mine like to have their DPI on quite high. They're maybe on 2000 or 2500, which is very high. If you're any higher than that, then I suggest you definitely turn that down. Now I have mine on 800 DPI and I combine this with an in-game soldier sensitivity of 5%. Now this is a little bit low and it basically means that I'm going to have to move the mouse more in order to rotate my soldier in a 180 or a 360 degree turn. Now the way to test this out is to look at your mouse mat and measure around 30 centimeters. You want your mouse to move 30 centimeters across the mouse mat, and in doing so your soldier will do a complete 360 degree turn. Now if you're not sure what DPI or sensitivity you have to combine them together, visit mousesensitivity.com, the link is in the description. You can then input your DPI, which you'll also be able to see in your driver settings of your mouse, which you can easily access on your computer. You can check your DPI, then you can combine it with an in-game sensitivity in order to get the right combination. Some people might have 600 DPI and maybe a 7% in-game. Some people might have 1200 DPI and a 4% in-game. You see what I'm getting at? You combine the two together and that's how you get your ideal sensitivity. Now as I said, 30 centimeters for a 360 is what most people go for if you're trying to be really accurate. Now you might be somebody who has a really high sensitivity and this isn't something for you, but if you're really struggling with aiming, it definitely worked for me. Just lower the sensitivity a bit, 30 centimeters for a 360 and you'll be on to a winner. Now the difference between high sensitivity and low sensitivity is fairly simple. When you've got a high sensitivity, it's a lot easier to turn, but you're less accurate when you're not warmed up. Low sensitivity, you're just consistent as soon as you start playing, and you'll definitely notice this if you change your sensitivity from high to low on the game. An easy way to test this in game is pick a position maybe in the test range on BF4 or an empty server in BF1 and just practice shooting targets on the wall and just see how your mouse moves on your mouse mat. See if that's something that you're willing to put up with in game, or is it too far between targets when you're moving your mouse. When it comes to in-game settings in Battlefield 4, you need to make sure you've got a couple of things changed. Vertical sync has to be off, and when it does come to your graphics settings, you want to make sure you've got it set up in such a way that your FPS do not drop below your refresh rate. Now, I have a refresh rate of 144 Hz on my monitor, which means I want to be getting at least 144 FPS in game. Now, because I make YouTube videos and I want things to look good, quite often I'll sacrifice some of that in order to turn the settings up. But if you're looking for the best accuracy you as a player can possibly get, you want to have more FPS than you have refresh rate. A lot of people will have a 60 Hz refresh rate on their monitor, so you want to be getting 70 to 80 FPS. And the things you can do to turn that down is obviously any settings in game, you can turn them down to low. Make sure you keep your mesh quality on high, but apart from that, things can be low. Again, people in the description can offer their settings or maybe little tips and tricks to get higher FPS in games. I know it's an absolute pain in the arse in BF1 because the game runs like a bit of a pig, so it's difficult to get the high FPS, but it is possible, and there are fixes on the internet to get more FPS and help yourself that way. When it comes to your FOV in game, I'd suggest going for something in the middle. If you go for a super high FOV, it's going to look like you're running super fast and you have no recoil on your weapon. But of course, in reality, that's not exactly what's happening. Take a look at my locker videos and you'll see my point. It does look like I have no recoil on my guns, but of course, if that was the case, I wouldn't be missing bullets when I was shooting a target. Now, a lower FOV is going to enable you to see targets at a closer range a lot clearer. You're going to see a lot more recoil on your weapon and therefore be able to control it better, and you'll have the advantage at the close engagements. This again is a completely personal opinion, and that's why I'm saying go for one in the middle, but definitely switch it up between the two. Now, when it comes to Battlefield 4, there's a couple of tips and tricks that I definitely like to offer in order for you to help your aiming and just get better at accuracy overall. Now, of course, your vehicles and soldier sensitivity are completely different. Now, there are two ways to manage this in game. Firstly, you might have a mouse that has 2 or 3 different options for DPI. If that's the case, I would suggest a normal DPI for your infantry that you're used to, maybe 600 DPI and 6% in game, 7% in game, something like that. And then your vehicles, I'd definitely go for a much higher setting. So maybe something like 800 DPI and 20% in game. That's what I have personally. Now, the reason I have it higher is because the turret on the tank needs to be turned faster, same with the LAV, and pretty much every single vehicle on the game requires you to move the turret fast in order to be competent. So that's why you have a far higher sensitivity for vehicles. You also don't have to worry about recoil. Maybe you do a little bit in the gunner seat of the helicopter, but it's not really something that you need to worry about. So a much higher sensitivity is required in Battlefield 4. Also, a couple of tips for Battlefield. Bursting is the key to getting the most out of your weapon. Now, you've probably heard this a load of times before, but maybe you don't know exactly what is required. So let's take a go-to weapon in Battlefield 4. Let's take the AEK. Now, in order to make this gun as effective as possible, you should be concentrating on 3 to 6 round bursts from the kind of the mid-range. The reason you're doing this is because you're firing a couple of bullets, you're taking a break, and the gun is resetting its recoil. So the next couple of bullets you fire are going to be deadly accurate again. With Battlefield 1, it's very important that you are letting the gun reset for a little bit longer than in Battlefield 4. I know in a few cases in Battlefield 1, it takes the weapon a couple of seconds to redo the recoil and reset the recoil. So again, this video isn't perfect for Battlefield 1, but it's the same sort of principle. You want to be taking breaks between each burst in order to improve your accuracy. Another tip that I found that helped a lot when I was trying to improve my accuracy in Battlefield was always aim where you think somebody's going to be. And this sounds incredibly simple and something that you may not be thinking about when you're playing, but let's say you're running down a corridor in lockers and you're going to be turning right at the end of this corridor. Almost have your weapon pointing at the very apex of that corner, just in case someone comes round it, and you've saved yourself a teeny fraction of a second. And this may sound ridiculous, but when you ADS, you're already going to be pointing in the direction that you want to be pointing in when you shoot. This helps a load when jumping around corners to shoot people, especially if you're trying out these Zuzu jumps and things like that. Already aiming where you're wanting to shoot before you actually shoot is so important, and it will help you a massive amount when trying to improve your accuracy in Battlefield games. The final tip I'd like to give you today is go on this website, www.aimbooster.com. I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that. It's just a really, really useful website to improve your aim and accuracy. Basically, you just have to shoot things on screen, and it kind of measures your latency between targets, your speed, your accuracy, all the good stuff that you want to improve in FPS games. This is probably the simplest trick that you can apply once you've done obviously the basic stuff like mouse acceleration and sorted your sensitivity out. Play this for a couple of minutes before you jump on Battlefield and you'll already have the edge on opponents who might be a little bit rusty. Hopefully this guide helped you a little bit. If it did, please leave a like on it down below, and as I said, check out Hex's channel, it's down in the description, and leave any tips and tricks you have in the comments below. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll catch you in the next video.